Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of my CSS tutorial, and in this episode I'm gonna go through CSS fonts and font families. So yeah, let's get going. First of all, the font selection is very important when you're making a website. It has a huge impact on how the readers experience your website. It can create a strong identity for your own website, and you gotta use a font that's easy to read, adds value to your texts, and you also gotta use the correct colors in the background and the text colors. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and create an example paragraph right over here. I'm gonna type in lorem and press tab, and we got some sample text over there. Then I'm gonna go to my style sheet, which is already linked to my index file, and I'm gonna take the body element. I'm gonna change the font family to be serif. Now there's no difference, is it? Nope. What about sans serif? Well, now there is a difference. So the serif is the default font. They have small strokes at the edges of each letter, and they create a sense of formality and elegance. Sans serif fonts have clean lines, as you can see, and they create a modern and minimalistic look. Then there's monospace, which I want to show you. So these are like the five generic font families in CSS. Monospace looks like this. It creates a kind of a mechanical look. Then we have cursive. It imitates some human handwriting. And we have fantasy, and that's kind of a decorative slash playful font. And all of these five fonts belong to one of the generic font families. So yeah, for example, the serif font belongs to the generic font family of serif. Then there's the sans serif. I'm gonna give you some examples. So this is the serif font, the default. We can use Times New Roman. Actually, the default is Times New Roman or serif. It might be both. Alright, anyways, then we can use a font called Georgia. It looks like that. Or Garamond. Looks like that. Then we have the generic font family of sans serif. We can use Arial, we can use Verdana, we can use Helvetica. Okay, then we have monospace, something called Courier, New. And by the way, when your font name has a space in between, you gotta put it inside of quotes. Both single quotes or double quotes will do. So this is Courier New. This is the monospace font family. Then we got Lucida Console. Looks like this. And we got Monaco. Looks like pretty much nothing has changed. Then there's the cursive font families and the fantasy font families that we already took a little look on. So basically there's a lot of fonts to choose from. I am going to be using a font family of Arial, backed up by Helvetica and sans serif. So if, for example, the Arial fails to load, then it will use this font as a backup and this font as a backup if both of these fail to load. So yeah. Now right over here I have written down some web safe fonts. What it essentially means is that these fonts are installed on pretty much every single browser and device, but still you should use fallback fonts. So if for some reason the first one fails to load, you should put always a backup over here to the font family property. So yeah, web-safe fonts are fonts that are universally installed across all browsers and devices. However, there's no 100% guarantee that it will work even though it's kind of a called web-safe font. There's always a slight chance that the font is not found or installed properly, and therefore we gotta use fallback fonts, also known as backup fonts. So you should always use multiple fonts, and the first one that gets found is being used on the website. Now, right now I'm using Arial, and it is one of the web safest fonts available on all the major operating systems, and it's very widely used. I like it too, and this is what it looks like. Then we have Verdana. It's a very popular font as well, and easy readability even for small font sizes. So this is Verdana. Then we have the Tahoma. So there's less space between the characters in this font. And by the way, all of these fonts belong to the sans serif font family. So yeah. Alright, there's a lot more of these that you can search from the internet. And yeah, let's go with the Tahoma font this time. Okay, after this I'm gonna show you some of the commonly used font fallbacks. So first of all, we got the font family of serif fonts. And these are the font families we usually use for serif fonts. They are very commonly used font fallbacks. So for example, right over here, Times New Roman is the first font, Times is the backup, and serif is the third backup. Over here we only got two fonts, which means there's only one backup, which is serif, which is almost guaranteed to work. Then we got the sans serif fonts right over here. This is what I like to use very often. Then you can also use this font family, this one, or this one right over here. So these are the sans serif fonts. Then we have monospace fonts, like this family right over here. We have cursive fonts, like this one, and fantasy fonts, like these ones. Let's use one of these. Let's take, for example, the fantasy font family. It will look like this. If we take one of these cursive fonts, it will look like this. If we take the monospace font family, it will look like this. I kinda like that. I'm gonna keep it. Alright, so yeah, this is the font fallbacks chapter essentially, so always include some fallback fonts or backup fonts, because for some reason the first font might fail to load. Okay, then I'm gonna show you a new CSS property that's going to be called font-style. So we can use the normal, which is the default, nothing seems to change. Then we have italic. Now the text is shown in italic, it's not too visible, but if I change this to be a font family of Arial, Helvetica, and sans serif, you can definitely see the difference in the text. That's the normal one, that's the italic one. Alright, and then we have oblique. That's kind of like the italic one, but it's going to the other way. So this is oblique, this is italic. Actually no, they are pretty much the same. Okay. Anyways, you can use which one you want. I'm gonna use italic on this one, for example. Then we have the font weight property. So over here we can put a number or a word. So we can put, for example, normal. This is the default value. The font is now normal weight. If I make this to be lighter, there's not much of a difference, but it is a little bit lighter. If I make it to be 900, now you can see a really big difference. 800, 700, 600, 500, 400, 300, 200, 100. There's really not too much difference on those. What we usually do is use the font weight bold to make something show up on the web page. So this is the most commonly used. We can also put it to lighter, but that doesn't have too much of a difference, at least on the Arial font. Actually, let's remove the italic font style, put it to normal, and yeah, there's really not any difference here, as you can see. But the bold, that has some difference on it. Then we have another CSS property called font variant. We can either use the normal, which is the default, or we can use something called small dash caps. You can already see the change in the font. I'm gonna change the boldness to be normal. So yeah, this is the difference. That's the normal one. That's the small caps one. Normal, small caps. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with fonts if you combine them with the previous episodes of text styling as well. So we can create a lot of different varieties of text. Then we have the font size property. Now I'm gonna select the P paragraph, and I'm gonna set the font size to be 16 pixels. That's the default on paragraphs. Now if I increase the font size, for example, to be 30 pixels, my text, this paragraph, is a lot bigger now. We can also use EM. 1 EM means 100%, and that's the default. 1.1 EM means 110%. You can also use REM, that means root. Basically 1 EM is equal to 16 pixels, or the size can be calculated from pixels to EM by dividing pixels with 16, and that equals EM, but you don't really have to know that. However, you can use the EM, so this is 120%, 130%, 140%, or even 2 EM. Now this paragraph has a font size of 200%. A common way is to set the font size at the body element to be 100%. There we go. So now it's going to be initially 100% always. If I remove this, font size 16 pixels, that's the default for paragraphs. I can make it larger, 24 pixels, or I can use, for example, 0.5 EM. Now the text is pretty small. I can also do 12 pixels. It's also pretty small. 24 pixels, it's pretty big. 1.25 EM, it's pretty big. I think you get the idea. Also, there's a lot of different values that you can use over here, but in my opinion, EM, percentages, and pixels are the most simplest ones. Alright, so let's say that the paragraph's font size is going to be 50%. Now that means that because the initial font size is 16 pixels, now it's basically equal to 8 pixels. There's no difference in these two. And this also means that the paragraph's font size will be 50% of the original 100% in the body element. If I made this to be 50% as well, then the paragraph's font size is only going to be 25% out of 100%. So now the font size is 50% out of 50%, which basically means the same as 25% out of 100%. So yeah. There we go. There's really no difference. Look at the paragraph right over here. That's the size. 100% and 25%. It's the same size. Or we can even use pixels. 16 divided by 4 is going to be 4 pixels. Okay, that actually makes the font a little bit smaller. 6. I think that's pretty close. Yeah, 6 pixels. 6 pixels is pretty close, so yeah. Alright, but there's different values you can use here, and it's all up to your own taste. I'm gonna leave this at 1.25 EM. Alright. Anyways, we have so much more to discuss about fonts that I'm going to continue on in the next episode. I hope you guys learned something new from this one, and I hope I'm going to see you in the next episode as well. So yeah, have a wonderful day everyone, and see you later. Happy learning everyone. Bye bye.